Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this Wednesday afternoon. It's really gloomy, very boring outside. You guys can't see it, but it really doesn't matter. So let's talk basketball. So in the first segment, we are going to be covering Jason Kidd, who is right now on the hot seat after the recent Dallas Mavericks loss to the Pacers. Luka was visibly not unhappy on the bench of this game, so we're just going to quickly talk about that and his tenure, what it's been like, what some fans are talking about, and their opinions on the head coach. We're also going to talk about, in the second segment, we're going to talk about Trae Young on his podcast because he did have some things to say about his future with the Atlanta Hawks as well as defenses in the NBA. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit. And in the third segment, as usual, we're going to do a quick recap of all the games that went down last night. And there were a lot of upsets last night, so we're definitely going to acknowledge some of that. We also have a special fourth segment that I reveal at the end of every third segment, so stay in tune for that if you are interested. But before I dive into this first segment, I'd like to remind everybody, as always, to please remember to use the link that is in the description or the link that is displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is GSMCpodcast.net. And we use this link to get your comments recognized and to donate. It really helps the show. It helps make it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and go into our first segment, which is going to talk about Jason Kidd and him being on the hot seat with the Dallas Mavericks. But before I go into the specifics as to why he's on the hot seat, the biggest reason that he's on the hot seat now is because the Dallas Mavericks, they were on a roll at one point in this season with Luka scoring 70-plus points, and they were winning a bunch of games the second that Kyrie got back. And after they were winning a bunch of games, they sort of regressed. And they went back to being a team that just started losing a bunch of games. And one of the biggest reasons as to why they were losing a bunch of these games was because of their defense. And I'm just going to pull up the box scores and the schedules of all the recent games that they've played. So recently, right now, the Dallas Mavericks are 8th in the Western Conference when they were 6th at one point. So right now they're looking like they're going to be a play-in team, which is not ideal if you have a player like Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving on the roster. So being a play-in team is extremely disappointing if you're the Dallas Mavericks. And just looking at their schedule and who they've played, they played the Pacers yesterday, like I mentioned. They lost 137-120. They played the Sixers, and they lost to the Sixers. Without Joel Embiid, they ended up losing to the Sixers. The next game that they played, the game that they played before that was against the Boston Celtics. They lost in a blowout, 138-110. And in the game after that, they beat the Raptors, but the Raptors aren't really a good team. There's not really, it was expected of them to beat the Raptors. And even then, they still allowed 125 points for the Raptors to score. And then the game after that, they lost to Cleveland, but it wasn't really their fault because Max Strus hit a ridiculous buzzer beater from half court, which ended up winning them the game. So it's you can't really control that loss, and especially since they hit the game-winning, what would have been the game-winning shot before Max Strus hit that half court shot. So, and before that, they ended up losing to the Pacers yet again, 133-111 on February 25th. So, with all of these games in mind, the problem for the Dallas Mavericks, and it's been a problem for a pretty long time, is their defense. When they traded for Kyrie Irving, the reason why they did not make the playoffs was strictly because of their defense. And, like, yes, they have Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. They are phenomenal scorers. But what does that matter if other teams can just score right back on them? Like, it really didn't matter how many points you put up if, like, the other team was also able to put up points on you. That would just, like, cancel out. And they didn't really have a good enough roster at the time when they got Kyrie Irving from the trade to be able to play defense as good as they could. And that's sort of been like a problem and a trend that's been carrying on throughout the season. And a lot of people and a lot of fans, they blame it on Steve Kerr. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull up a quote that Steve Kerr said after the press conference. Now, the reporter asked a question, what Jason Kidd says when did I say Steve Kerr before? My bad, I meant Jason Kidd. What he says after if his team is lacking effort on the defensive end. So this is the quote. Our offense is our defense. Pardon me, I just messed up. Our offense is our defense. When we score, we will play defense. And I'm half joking, but I'm also being serious. It's just a matter of being able to be unselfish and sacrifice. Now, I hope I'm not the only one that looked at this quote and said, what? What are you even talking about? That's what you say to your team if they're lacking effort on defense? You just say, score more on offense and you'll play defense better? Like, what? That's not how it works. That's not how, granted, I have not been a coach in the NBA, so I guess I really can't talk. But at the same time, like, that's not how you motivate your team to play defense, especially if your offense isn't rolling. And during the press conference, he was sort of trying to, like, brush this whole thing off. Like, oh, like, our offense just, it wasn't working tonight. Like, we just weren't hitting shots. They were good shots, but we just weren't hitting them. He sounds like Doc Rivers. And you guys know exactly how I feel about Doc Rivers, just putting the team under the bus and not taking any kind of accountability because, like, I understand the coach doesn't play in any of these games, but he influences how a lot of these players play. If his mindset isn't defensively minded, not many people on the team are going to bother trying to work on their defense. And so here's another comment. On Twitter, it said, Jason Kidd is the same as Steve Nash. Neither could motivate a starving dog to eat filet mignon. And this was a quote by @SawGraceChamp. And being a Brooklyn Nets fan, I have to agree with that. Like, that was the biggest problem with Steve Nash and his coaching. It was sort of like, when he was the coach for the Brooklyn Nets, it was sort of just go out there and shoot the ball and hoop. That was really it. From Steve Nash. Like, and if the shots weren't falling, whatever. Those were good shots that you took. You just got to make them next time. No. That's not the mindset that you're supposed to be going at when you're coaching a team. Like, yes, they should be hitting the shots on offense. But at the same time, you can do something to sort of, like, stop the other team from hitting shots on offense if you're not hitting shots on offense. And that's by playing defense. And if you disrupt the other team and you keep playing defense like the way that you play, or like if you competently play defense, eventually, like, it'll give your team motivation and it'll roll into their offense. Look at the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics have a starting five that every single one of them can play just a little bit of defense. Like, Kristaps, like, on the ball defense, it's not really his strong suit, and I'm not really, like, faulting Kristaps for that because he is relatively tall, but he is a presence in the paint and he can disturb people in the paint, while everybody else on the team, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and Drew Holiday, can easily switch off the ball or, like, can easily switch off of screens and can make the rotations whenever they're needed and play defense. And we've seen a bunch of these blowout wins from the Boston Celtics, in a large part because of their defense, and it rolls into their offense being so good. If you have great defense, it absolutely demoralizes the other team on the offensive side of the ball because they can't get anything going. And it does not make any sense how, like, that's where his mindset initially goes. Here's another quote from the press conference that Jason Kidd said. So, and this was a quote after the reporter asked how he can clean up the defense, because the defense on the Pacers was really, really bad. I didn't even have to watch. I'm not even gonna lie. I didn't watch much of the game, but I didn't have to watch the entirety of the game to know that the Pacers were moving really, really fast, and the Dallas Mavericks were just too lazy to get back on defense. It was just a no-brainer. So the quote is, "We tried everything. We switched to hit. We went zone. For us, it's about the rotations, not giving up the corner three. We'll go back, look at film, and see what we can do better. This is actually a great test for us." Now, this shouldn't have even been a test if you're the Dallas Mavericks. Defense should be a focal point in all of this. Another quote that he said was, "Rome wasn't built in a day." And I have to disagree with this quote because, yes, Rome wasn't built in a day. I get that. But at the same time, it's been 2 to 3 years since making the conference finals. And somehow the Mavericks have only regressed since then. And it doesn't, I understand, how part of it is, oh, the rest of the teams in the West are really, really good. But, still, that is not ideal. Making the Western Conference Finals, then not making it far enough in the playoffs at all, and then missing the playoffs completely. That is a complete step back from, and no pun intended because Luka does a lot of step backs, but it is a complete step back from everything that they've accomplished with. And just going to go ahead and pull up some more numbers to give you an idea just of how bad Jason Kidd's coaching on defense really is. So, Jason Kidd, he used to be a Bucks head coach, and as the Bucks head coach, he was the coach from 2014 all the way to 2018. So, the record for the Bucks was, for his first year, 41-41. Then the next year, 33-49. Then the year after that, 42-40. Then after that, in 2017-2018, 44-38. And Coach Bud's first year, after being replaced with Jason Kidd, was 60-22. So, and on top of that, the defensive rating that the Bucks had under Jason Kidd was over 110. But the second they got Coach Bud, the defensive rating went to 105 and was the best defensive team in the NBA. So, with all of that in mind, it doesn't really seem like Jason Kidd, he's that good of a coach on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, granted, all of this might play into a part with the fact that Giannis was just entering into his prime in the 2019-2020 season. So, that makes sense. Giannis Antetokounmpo, he wasn't the player that he was when he was coached under Kidd. But still, when you look at these numbers, just these raw numbers and, what's expected of him and his tendencies, it makes a lot of sense how right now the Dallas Mavericks are struggling on the defensive side of the ball. And it's really, really, it's really infuriating, especially if you're a Mavs fan, because here you have this kid, Luka Doncic, that can do absolutely everything on the basketball court, apart from play defense. And all of this scoring that he can bring to the table. He scored 70-plus points in a game. And this talent, this raw talent that he has, is being wasted by the Mavericks simply because they cannot play defense. And it's infuriating because this is exactly why Luka Doncic can't win an MVP, even though he is constantly the front runner every single year to win the MVP. It's because the overall team and the team success behind him, it's not there. The team record is, right now they're 8th in the Western Conference, like I mentioned earlier. So they're not going to be able to, Luka Doncic is not going to be able to win MVP if he's the 8th seed in the Western Conference. And this constantly, it keeps happening every single year. He has a phenomenal year, but the team just isn't good enough or isn't where it needs to be for him to even be considered to win the MVP. And if you're someone like Luka Doncic, I guarantee you that would absolutely infuriate you, because you see all of these players that are arguably not putting up better numbers than you, like, for example, Jason Tatum. Like, Jason Tatum's numbers, they're great. I'm not trying to talk down on Jason Tatum's game or his numbers. His numbers are fantastic. But compared to Luka's, they aren't as fantastic. But even with that, Jason Tatum still is higher in the MVP rankings simply because his team is just better. And if you're Luka Doncic, like, that would definitely infuriate you. Just the fact that this guy, he's not even averaging better numbers than me, but just because, like, he's getting his team wins, he gets more recognition for MVP votes than I do. And it might not be fair, but that's just how the MVP award works, because that's what the most valuable player is. A player that can that brings your team wins. And it really feels like a lot of, like, whether it's teammates, whether it's coaches, whatever it might be, something is holding him back from really being that MVP player that we all know that he is. But I digress. With that, we are out of time for this first segment. So after this short break, I'm going to go into the second segment where we talk a little bit about Trae Young and what he has to say on his podcast, what he had to say about NBA defenses, and what he had to say about his future with the Atlanta Hawks. So I will be right back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign.